Welcome to the 16th of these videos. Today's is a bit different to everything else I've done so far in that I didn't really have any topic I wanted to particularly cover in terms of preparing for the game I'll be running later. So I will be doing I'll be doing a world building stream with the idea that whenever I don't have a topic, I can return to this world and we can, with chat's assistance, can just build a world together with continents and cities and races, history to the world, that kind of thing. As a long-term project, but I'll be releasing the uh, finished sections as we go to so people can use them if they want to. Probably on my website, but I'll also have a Google Drive folder set up for it, so I can link that in my Twitch channel description and my YouTube channel description and everything else. So you don't have to go to my website if you don't want to. Um, I will also take everything from these Notepad documents and format them properly in Word and save them as a PDF so that they look better than just black text and have decent formatting. I'm still going to recap previous week the previous week's game because, as I've said before, it helps get me in the right mindset for the game, and that's really what this was all about, and it's good practice to get into. So the recap, uh, I believe I mentioned the week previously was just a combat, um, where I was introducing werebears to the party, introducing orcs as the next big threat to the party. The cleric that has joined the party recently means that they can now interrogate dead bodies. So they've learned a few more things about the world and the figure moving against them in the background. So they learned about the Horde Father and stuff. And then last session, they spent a while debating what to do with their orc prisoner. I kept chivying them along because they were being chased by a giant bat made of storm cloud, well, kind of forming from storm clouds, and that was resolved when it actually killed their prisoner, um, solving their conundrum really. The cleric then, of course, used to speak with dead, and they found out exactly where the Stormfather is. Um, so they then had a decision to make about whether to go to that location or to continue with their objective. And like I've said before, it's all about player choice for me. So I wasn't influencing them in any way. I kept deliberately out of the conversation, and I didn't suggest anything. They chose to continue on their path, and they found their first landmark and identified where they had to go. And that was really it. So tonight's game will be starting with the Maze of, well, we'll be starting them in the Maze of Smoke and Mirrors, which is what spent the last few streams building, designing. That's the right word. So that's the recap, really, and nothing much happened apart from any of that. There was some character development, obviously, it's a role-playing game, and some cool character interactions, but nothing really story-worthy. So, world building. I've never built a world like this before, spirit of honesty. So this is a new thing for me. I usually don't go so granular into world building. I just invent stuff when I need it. So this isn't going to be my game world. This isn't going to impact my D&D game in any way. It's just something I thought would be cool to do. The only thing I've done is I've named the world Yngun, in brackets Ynguntef. The closest approximation I can get to my understanding of the Welsh phrase for first or the first, because it's the first word I've done, and I like the Welsh language. I like how it sounds. Apart from that, you'll notice I've got a blank list of deities, or a section for deities, and a section for creation and myth. I might actually add a section for myths as well. And I have made a list which probably won't show. No, it's not showing on stream. Of I'll just copy it and then delete it. the cleric domains which are suitable for a medieval fantasy world. There is the city domain, but that's a quote-unquote modern magic setting, so it's a lot of techno stuff. So what I have is a random number generator, set for values 1 through 13, and the first roll on it is going to give the number of primary deities. If it's a bit low, I'll roll it again. And then we'll use that random number generator to assign domains to the primary deities. And then we'll name them, kind of work out what their actual role and purview is. Go from there, like nature, probably split into the 4 classical elements, for example, that kind of thing. Order may be split into justice and vengeance. Lots of stuff, cool stuff like that. And I will have at least one evil deity, just for balance's purpose. So, to begin, the random number generator is ready. So the result is 10. So apparently we have 10 primary deities. So, and after rolling for these, deities, if I can get the window to snap, we can go through and sort out a name for the pantheon rather than the 10 primary deities. So the first result is 1. So Arcana. Second result, 7. Light. Third result, another Arcana. And if I get too many if I get to any kind of domains I can't think of a viable alternative for, so that 2 gods don't have the same thing, I'll just re-roll it. But I'm hoping that won't happen with chat's help. Death. There's another Arcana. Let's this random number generator really likes 1s and 7s apparently. But again, light can encompass darkness, so I'm not too fussed about having that. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. Bear with me 1 sec. Cool. Anyway, what was I on? 3, 6, 8. 9, and 10. Oops. Move that over there and minimize it for now. So, I don't need this list anymore. I've got it saved anyway, in case I need to reference it. So, probably going to have name on the left-hand side, domain in the middle, and then kind of the function of that domain. So, probably going to be worth splitting magic, arcana into theory and practice. One of these is going to be darkness. and then also have a D&D flavored alignment. So if we have lawful evil for theory, lawful good for practice, neutral. I'll talk through my ideas after I've assigned alignments. True neutral, chaotic neutral, chaotic good, neutral good. That's going to bother me. Neutral evil. Yeah, this is the only life one I've got. Don't have a neutral good. Oh, we do in Forge. If you're just tuning in, I'm just assigning random alignments to domains to create gods associated with them for this world. Luckily, and hopefully this doesn't pick up the player's handbook PDF. It does not. I have the PHP open for inspiration if I need it. Yeah, I thought lawful neutral was a thing. It's just drawing a complete mind blank. Protection of all. I could actually add that as well so I don't forget these. So have like a little short creed for each deity. Oh, you know what? Life will be chaotic neutral as well. So theory. This would, I mean, being a lawful evil alignment, it will be something along the lines of what they don't know can't be used against me. And that's primarily in terms of magic, but obviously magic users traditionally are smart people if they're making a study of magic. So this is actual bright light, daylight. Here today, gone tomorrow. So kind of a capricious light deity. For tradition. We master the arcane. Death. I mean, technically, the end of everything is only the beginning. Capitalization like this of the English language always strikes me as weird, but you don't capitalize certain words. Is my understanding, anyway. Darkness. And if you have any suggestions for any of these, please let me know. I'm not averse to changing them. There for all. Servant of Manon. Then this is more like along the lines of just the pursuit of knowledge and the drive to teach others. My actions. A steady hand. And a warm heart. Unbound and unbridled, so vibrancy and fecundity and fertility and stuff like that. And what is the example behavior for neutral evil? Do whatever they can get away with. Yeah, that's what I thought. So any and all means necessary. Just because I'm not terribly great with names. I'm going to pull up a name generator and see what it gives. Cool. Some of these are quite good. So I might also assign titles to these names. Related to their creeds, and obviously again, if you have any suggestions, please do let me know. I like how these names are gendered, but they're just random letters shoved together. Oop, hyphen. Obviously, this is the pantheon. Oh, obviously, this is the pantheon at the start of quote unquote time. As we progress through the history of this world through subsequent videos and streams, the different races of the world will give them different names. I think that's enough from that generator. Let's pick a different one. Deities don't necessarily have to have an alignment ooze. This is just for my own personal benefit for an idea of what roles they might have in the mythological cycles of the world. So like Hades is typically depicted as evil, quote unquote, but really isn't. It's just human manifestation of a force of nature. Does that make sense? I feel very strongly about things like that. Apologies. Ooh, that's a cool name. Asus. And they're 100% up for changing or removing if they become a hindrance. It's just a starting point. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll keep the creed there just for some kind of hint at potential narrative. Actually, you know what? because some people do prefer alignments, what I'll do is I'll just add them after the video. I'll go back through and add them because some people do prefer them. Um, so there'll be an optional thing that I'll keep to one side so it doesn't impact this in any way. Pretty sure this is just using the same name list. Oh, I like that. Typo, but it works. Okay, so we've got names, domains, potential creed if it's needed to serve as inspiration. Um, Perhaps these are just the Yngun, relating back to the name of the world as the 10 first people, I guess. So I'm just going to grab some water. As an aside, if you ever want to add anything vaguely fantastical, I guess, in terms of related to fantasy or odd sounding names to you, certainly, and to probably most of the people you know, picking a word in your language that you like to associate and then just translating it and then adapting that translation works quite well in most cases. You just have to be careful what translations you go for. Again, this is related to a Welsh phrase meaning first, which is why it's in brackets so I don't forget. I personally just like titling my gods as well. Actually, the gods in the homebrew world I run my D&D game in, they don't have names, they have titles, but that's by the by. Um, uh, and again, any of these titles available for change. So Hidden Teacher, more about keeping knowledge to oneself than sharing it without using the word selfish. Pretty self-explanatory. And then the emphasis more on practicing one's art to master it. A lot of these I'm going to try and keep gender neutral just so that they can be whatever you need them to be if you give your gods gender. I like a mix of gender neutral and gendered because the games I run are definitely more Greco-Roman influenced in terms of the gods are uh, manifestations of these forces viewed through human flaws. Just because it helps keep my players helps ground them to the setting for my players, I feel. But obviously, gods can be whatever you want them to be. They can be unknowable by definition. They can be great old ones. They can be unnamed forces of the multiverse that work in both mysterious and simple ways. Also, I like symbolic titles that could mean many things. So, kind of death is a threshold and a doorway to something new. Key holder, perhaps. I'm just going to draw straight from the fact that that word down name ends in TIA and tie it to Vesture, the Hearthkeeper. I know it's a forged deity, but fire's involved in both, and heat and making things, whether family or metallic objects. Some more neutrally gendered names. Obviously, Green Lord, gendered. Um, Obviously, through names you can also, through titles, sorry, you can also hint at potential character traits or personality traits or quote unquote alignments. So Deathbringer obviously doesn't sound like it has good connotations. I think it's just these two. Yes, it is. Hmm. Nightbringer, not really great, and sounds a lot like Deathbringer. Uh, I mean, for now, just the shadowed one, even if not explicitly on an antagonistic side of a pantheon, it does still sound uh, ambiguous. And I go back to the teaching motif of admittedly, of kind of the knowledge of the arcane with Larnia, um, Kiagi, the enlightened guide, being a teacher and someone who can show you the way through their actions and knowledge. Also, of course, this is focused primarily on a D&D setting. You can obviously use it for whatever fantasy game you want or adapt it for whatever purposes you want, but having the creeds there and an ethos for each deity um, might help with people who want to play divine spellcasters like clerics and paladins. I'm just going to remove these hyphens and replace them with brackets for my own uh, benefit more than anything else. Because it just didn't look well organized to me. But there we go. So we've got 10 primary deities, the Yngun, Lanya the Hidden Teacher, domain Arcana, specifically the theory of magic, um, Idione, the Dancing Light, domain of light, Notrix, the Careful Mistress, the practice of magic, Aces, the Keyholder, death, Cora, the Shadowed One, light, but the darkness aspect of light, so the absence of the inverse, etc. Kiagi, the enlightened guide. Knowledge. Ostya, the hearthkeeper, forge deity. Ustam, the green lord, deity of life. And Vastris, the everlasting shield, protection. And Zidros, the deathbringer, god of war. So what I'm going to do now, because this is a creation myth, going to pull up my random number generator again, set it to produce a value between 1 and 10, and that will give me the number, give us the number of deities that were directly involved in the creation of the pantheon and of the world. 1. Okay, so this is going to be there'll be one deity from which all others arose. So obviously the easy answer is Ustam, the Green Lord. I think it's too easy. Yeah. The way I immediately thought of it was Brahmanic Hinduism, with the idea that they're all aspects of the same god, perhaps, but have gradually become their own individual deities in their own right, I guess. The second easiest answer would be Kiagi, kind of, but then that's leaning more towards like Aslan singing Narnia into creation and Eru Ilúvatar singing Ada, Earth into creation, just through knowing about the world and describing it into being. Personally, I'm leaning towards either Notrix, the Careful Mistress, or Acis, the Keyholder. Acis being that this is perhaps not the first world or pantheon, whatever, but kind of the rebirth of the last. Or Notrix being kind of her first act. And would that be better, Steve, than anything else? Yeah, Notrix kind of casting the first spell in capitals to bring the world and the other deities about. And something to remember, to point out, I suppose, is that these aren't the only deities. These are just the 10 primary deities, or deities, depending on who you talk to about pronunciation of words. So the god of blackjack and hookers and pop culture references, Steve, is one of the non-primary deities. And just to sate your, you know what, I can't even bother to generate a name for that. In your game, Steve, in your game, they can be the primary deity. In this game, in this world, probably not. Although I do like gods of luck and fortune, and I was kind of hoping to get a god of trickery on this list, but them's the breaks. Random generation. So, well, I like the idea of this being a reborn pantheon and world after some horrendous world-ending event, universe-ending, what have you. The first spell as a kind of a mythos to me sounds cooler. So I'm going to go with the first spell, question mark, cast by Notrix. And then as part of that, Notrix created Ustam, Korra, I do not know the mythos around Brandon Sanderson's work. I fully intend to read it at some point, but my backlog is larger than I would care for it to be. But I do like new worlds and making new worlds and reading about new worlds and taking on influences from things like that. Life, light. Cool. Yeah, I think you mentioned how good they are before, actually. Life and light uh, as essential components of the spell, capital letter. So that's life and light and practice. We'll have Lanya and Kiagi arose spontaneously. And again, any of this is available for debate and challenge and changing um, as the spell realized itself, maybe? No. Um, so the idea there being that the uh, I think so. The prime action here was being cast by Notrix, Steve. Um, if that helps any, I'm not going to ask where Notrix came from because that is not the point of a creation myth. But I random number generated my way to 1 as being the creator. So if that makes any sense. And then just things arise from sometimes arise from the effects of the creator. Unintended effects. So knowledge. Um, yeah, so kind of knowledge and the theory of spellcrafting arose from the spell itself. So kind of the spell created sapience, maybe. Regardless, I still have 4 gods to explain, or we have 4 gods to explain in about half an hour or so. Maybe a little longer, depends how far we get. So, cool. Just put sapience as an unintended side effect. So I don't forget that. So the last thing I want to have to do is to listen to myself speak. Ooh, I like that. So what, Notrix's memory becomes the sapience? I'm just gonna make a note of what hasn't been used yet. We've got war, protection, forge, death. Cast by Notrix, who... Oh, no, Notrix is gendered. Yeah, I could easily have the spell kind of echoing throughout time. Um, If time's just the spell continuing to be cast, though, kind of where does everything come from? What is the purpose of the spell? I'm not saying that's a bad idea. Uh, as the idea stands, kind of the first spell was creation, just pure creation. I like the idea, Steve. That's more um, doctrine than myth, though, if that makes it. The way I'm understanding it, it's that's more a religious teaching, which by all means, like, there's 100% something that the Notrix's faithful could believe, that their mistress's work continues to sustain them, and without it, everything would end. And in fact, it's what she could believe if she's lost her memory of casting the spell. Three O's. Oh, nope. For crediting purposes. And an underscore. And again, for crediting purposes. I mean, this is if the spell, following that line of thought, if the spell does sustain everything, then, and Notrix has lost her memory, then perhaps she's cast the spell before, and kind of it's all cyclical, maybe. Yeah, jumping cactus. I try to do regular Monday DM prep streams just so that I can provide uh, practical examples of GM tips and things. So this is just world building as a thought experiment. Notrix, what the spell does is going to do is contained within humans. So what? Every human every sentient being knows for certain the world is going to end. I'd rather go with the no one can know. But if her memory is what gives rise to sapience and sentience, oh, good. Jumping cactus. Um, this is definitely something I'll be returning to. So, as background, I just I used a random number generator to determine number of primary deities for this world, and then use that to determine what their domains were using 5th edition cleric domains. There are 13 if you're wondering, if you want to make your own list for random number generator purposes, using 2 of the Unearthed Arcana. I think 2 of the Unearthed Arcana domains. Again, I'll just flash it up on screen. That's the list I used for cleric domains. There we go. And the unearthed arcana that they were associated with. There is a 14th one, but it's for modern stuff. Anyway, going back to this. So if Notrix's memory is what gives rise to sapience and knowledge of the arcane and the world, and she forgets every time that she's cast the spell because she doesn't have that memory anymore, then I guess that would lead people to intuit and worship Notrix as kind of the sustainer of everything, and as Steve suggested, when the spell ends, everything ends, which would then kind of give rise. Why does OBS keep dropping frames? I'm not even streaming anything visual. It's just a notepad document. Anyway, which would then give rise to belief in the end of everything. Well, perhaps she remembers how to cast it again when the spell ends and all of that knowledge returns to her. So she knows that she's going to forget. She knows that her memory and knowledge is what brings about life in the world. And then because she can't remember doing all of this, and this is obviously not related to creation myths in any way, but perhaps because she can't remember doing this, she is a distant deity who doesn't necessarily interact with her followers that often because she doesn't understand where they came from. She just knows that it is nice to thread things together. Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I'll probably make a note of after this video, and I've got time to type everything up. Ooh, I like that ooze. Okay, right. I didn't want to be doing this necessarily. No, but so copy this list into a new document. Haha, magic. So we've got creator, Notrix, the careful mistress, arcana practice through tradition we master the arcane. Casts the first spell. Yes, loses her memory, which gives rise to Kiagi and Larnia, as well as sapient life. This is why I like collaborative creation and why I wanted to get this kind of stream format going. First spell sustains the universe. But the universe will end when the spell is finished. People pray for her memory to return before the spell ends. So that what? So she can continue to cast it rather than to think her work is done. That again. Who's see, recasting the spell implies that the spell has ended, and by what we've discussed before, Rather than recast or continue a spell, how about cast a second spell? So the first spell is preservation, the second spell is first spell is creation, the second spell is preservation. So cast. Why do I keep pressing R? And then you could, that does suggest that there could be a schism of kind of first spellites and second spellites who believe that she has her memory and that this is the second spell. Yeah, so the second spell could lead to like a hive mind with everyone working at working together and for the benefit of all. Yeah, to make the quote unquote perfect world. Um, you get to post-war states and things like that. Yeah, which I wouldn't have arrived at without you and Uza's suggestions. So that's cool. So we've got Notrix casts the first spell, loses her memory, which gives rise to Kyagi and Lania, gods of um, knowledge and theoretical magic, as well as sapient life. And the first spell sustains the universe, but the universe will end when the spell is finished. So so she doesn't remember casting the spell. No, she has to remember casting the spell, or at least starting to cast the spell. Oh, I just like world building through writing fiction, Steve, as you know. You can, I guess, LARP is a more practical application. So maybe she thinks she's in the process of still casting the spell. She doesn't realize that she's cast it. Yeah, because players really. Um, and it's her continuing to cast the spell, which is what sustains the universe. So maybe she just loses her memory of that final event where the spell is finished. Casts the first spell, loses her memory of finishing the spell. And continues to cast it. So the spell is obviously measured in millennia in terms of casting time. Well, whatever the eras. There we go, geological eras. Perhaps, but at what point would she forget that she's casting the spell? What's this? This is going to be. You can't see any of this. You just see the. I even see the cursor waving around. Workshop 5B, world building, creation, gods. Something to also consider is that this isn't going to be the last time I'm returning to this subject. So if we think of something else later on down the line, I have all of this information saved. So we've got kind of like second generation created by Notrix. And then that's Larnia and Gyagi. No, third generation created by Notrix's memory slash memories. Second generation would be Ustam, etc., etc. So going back to the other document temporarily, that was, oh yes, it's Notepad. I believe it was Ustam, Idione, and Quora. So Light and Life created to, create the universe, so to speak. Well, if we're going to Steve's point about memory bleeding off as more and more sentient creatures are born, is this a mythos where reincarnation is believed in? Because if it is, then that limits the amount of memory loss after a, finite point. I think that's all of the. I'm just going to open a separate document so I can see what we have on the other one. Hi, Celtic. Ah. So how do I? The trouble I've found is that OBS won't pick up certain programs due to the way they render um, things. So I would ordinarily be doing this in the name has escaped me completely. OneNote, that's the one, because I've got OneNote because I have to use Office for work, but I can't actually stream Microsoft Office programs through OBS. It's just it bypasses something in the graphics hierarchy. Although I have thought of something which could help potentially. It just depends on me remembering to check. Yeah, Microsoft indeed missing out on that Twitch advertising. It's really confusing though because Mike Moulds was its I think it's the director or something for D&D. He does stream Office and I don't know how. I've tried window capture, I've tried display capture, and neither of them work. So it's something I keep trying to figure out. So the start of the end times. People are born dumb, Steve. That's just a blanket statement. Babies are not smart. Uh, I could try a capture card. I don't know because I do all this on the computer I stream on, and I don't have the money to buy a streaming PC. I just use my work laptop, which is pretty good. I stream games off it as well, and obviously it can cope with streaming the games. I play them for the most part, so it's something I'm going to look into, and I've got more money for technological solutions, but I also want to tinker with some things behind the scenes. Anyway, okay, so going back to people are born dumb. So the start of the end times being when too many people are born and she forgets to keep casting the spell. Is that the suggestion? Cool. Okay, so uh, well, it's workshopping. It's better to have it down. Echoes through time enables magic to be used by others. Uh, I'll put it in this document and then conglomerate all of this afterwards. As more sapient life is born/created, she loses more memory and knowledge. Oh, I'm pretty good at poking holes in things as well, but unintentionally. Will eventually forget to keep casting the spell. Capital S. Keep casting the spell, and the universe will end. I am aware from D&D, Steve. Yes, your terrible slash in brackets awesome plan to solo a demon in a burning building. A devil, sorry, if I recall correctly. Uh, so we don't need to know. We don't need to know about what happens before she casts the spell for the first time, and having having the world end when too much sapient life exists. Oh, geez, that's great because you could have a death cult who's going around killing people because they want to return the knowledge so that she can keep casting the spell. Which this evil magic god/goddess, and as you say, good excuse for a bunch of wars. So what if so we have uh, death cult around Larnia tries to return memory/knowledge to Notrix through killing sapient. I believe there is a difference between sapient and sentience, or sapient and sentient, but I'm using these interchangeably for now. So then we can have Zidros be a fourth generation deity created by Larnia. As actually with the death deity Asus. Nope. The only bad guys are the ones that make sense. if they don't make sense, they're little more than animals, I guess. Something I do highly advocate for anyone who is thinking about picking up the GM. Yeah, but for a different reason, Celtic. It's an archetype, nothing more. Um, created by Lania to and this isn't these prompts in the brackets um, aren't perhaps what's actually happening, but what it's commonly believed is happening. Ooze, I think it's more praying for memory returning is praying for genocide in a way, depending on when you pray for the memory to return, I guess. Not that I advocate genocide in any way. I just feel like that needs pointing out right now. I do not advocate it. It is one of the worst crimes that someone can commit. Exactly. The counter cult could be the fifth generation created by Kiagi and encompass the kind of gods of home and hearth and forge and protection, which would be justice and things like that. It did get twisted, and I'm blaming Steve for that. I know Steve in real life, and the man is dark in terms of narrative, mostly. So, Steve, once again, this is all your fault. I'll put fifth generation, but this would be kind of more around the same time as uh, because Kyagi as the enlightened guide as a deity of knowledge knows that this isn't perhaps is the fragment of Notrix's memory that knows um, this isn't the first time the spell's been cast, and so knows that life will continue afterwards, and so sets up this creates these gods to protect life because they know that when the spell finishes, Notrix will just cast it again, and indeed the spell can be cast again, so life can begin anew. Does that make sense to everyone? And to be fair, a lot of this stuff does need to be established for creation myth purposes. So. Just hoping. Well, maybe that's what the second spell is. Maybe the belief is that if Notrix regains her memory, she can work with the other gods to cast the creation spell and then take a step back so she can kind of use her essence to fuel it in a way. I'm just gonna just put all your names up here so I don't have to, because this is collaborative, so it's just gonna be like everyone helped with this. Ooze underscore Steve. So where was I going with this? With the help of the other gods. And this also does leave space for other gods to arise, possibly just through worship rather than divine intervention in a way. So you've got the primary deity who are primary deities who are intrinsically woven into the world or the multiverse or whatever. But then there can be other gods that aren't a part aren't a part of that, but um, still exist and are worshipped. So what I'll probably do before next Monday when I continue this, I don't want to necessarily end right now, but just thinking out loud, um, is try and write all this up in a legible manner and then insert it into the original document as the creation myth and include about the second spell and things like that. And then perhaps go from there with some of the early myths and then some historical empires or events or what have you. If anyone does like this kind of world building, by the way, there is a role playing game called, I want to say Microscope. Yes, called Microscope, where you essentially create with the group of people. There's no GM. Where you create a timeline of anything you really want to, and there's a like a expansion book with suggestions and frameworks and things. But you create in um, an a-consecutive manner the timeline of something. And it's really cool. It's good for world building and for kind of improvisational stuff because the idea is that you don't think about what you want to create in advance because you're working with everyone else to create it. And in a more structured manner, there's another game called Dawn of Worlds where you play the gods and you just create a world together. Whether that's actually together, cooperative gods, or you wage war on the other gods to prove the dominance of your people and the countries you create. It's entirely up to you. It's a good game. Um, I really enjoyed the game I played of it. Admittedly, not so much as I could have done, but that was just because of something that happened in the game. Anyway, that was a bit of a digression from the ostensible purpose of the stream. I'm really happy with what we've got so far, and as I said, I will type it up into some sort of sensible non-word vomit manner, so that we can continue to work on it next week, and to build some more myths, and then, as I say, possibly move on to empires and historical events. Um, Probably going to have like the world's pretty old at this point, a couple of millennia maybe. Um, so enough time for civilizations to rise and fall, so that there's a feeling of history to the world, and so that we can have, as I say, other gods than these 10 Inguni. to flavor things with, and so that if anyone does use this as a setting, there is a history there that they can mine for um, story ideas and things like that. Does anyone have anything else they want to suggest or comment on before I start wrapping things up? Uh, I do have a little bit longer before I absolutely have to go, so I don't mind. And if you want to um, recap this for your own benefit or for any other purpose, this is all going up on YouTube afterwards. So I'll just go and give the blanket crediting at the top, just so I don't have to specifically remember where everyone contributed. This is, yeah, that is a good point. Um, Perhaps she's called both. Perhaps those people who Celtic, why? Perhaps those who um, follow the death cult just call her the forgetful because they believe that's kind of a term of respect and that they're acknowledging that flaw. And then somewhere in the world there is an immortal not elephant who knows its name's Notrix and remembers all of time. Hey, you can half joke, I will take things seriously. All I want to. If I think of a better word than forgetful, I will probably use it, but I like the idea that because I don't have symbology yet, Celtic, this was like all done in an hour. In an hour, I went from randomly generating domains to randomly generating names to this myth, um, and then symbology will have to follow necessarily later. Um, yes, being as she is the prime deity from whence all other deities arose, functionally speaking, I like her having two titles to separate her um, from the rest. It does. She of the Lost Memories, perhaps, or Mistress of the Lost Memories. Leaning more towards she of Mistress seems like she knows about it and she becomes a patron of amnesiacs. Going back to the symbology thing, Celtic. Cool. The uh, symbols, to my mind, evolve over time. So I'd rather have a rough mythological cycle, as in Vessel of the Lost Memories. And while the delay happens, having a mythological cycle in place um, means that we can look at the motifs of their stories and then give them symbols. I, of course, am assuming a delay is happening. Um, Obviously, you have to type, whereas I can speak, but I've noticed there is a delay in other videos, even though the channel shouldn't have one. It's really annoying, especially on this where I don't need a high bandwidth. It's just a notepad document. But there we go. Technology. Woo. I suppose while you're all here as well, I posted a poll on Twitter account. Oh, sorry. Did you mean as in vessel of the lost memories? I posted a poll on Twitter account, Comrade Bubbles, earlier about kind of diversifying from pure D&D. I don't know if it's anything else anyone's interested in, but in a similar manner, I was thinking we could we could workshop things like vampire courts for Masquerade and Requiem, or changeling freeholds for Dreaming and Lost, the Lost and the Dreaming, uh, and create NPC organizations for non D&D games. Oh no, that's fine. I like the title of Vessel. I'll put it in a question mark. That is perhaps something that the death cult could call her, because they are trying to fill the vessel with the lost memories. Nope. So it's a cool idea. Yes. So it's just something I had thought about too, because obviously D&D is a huge game, and I don't want to kind of say it's worthless in any way, because it's not. It's a great game. I really enjoy playing it, but I want to kind of flex my creative muscles in other settings and systems. So I don't know if that was anything anyone would be interested in kind of coming along on that experiment with me. Anyway, it's 3 o'clock my time, so I should probably start wrapping up to prepare for my D&D game later properly, with all of the formalization of things I have to do, like actually format the dungeon we've been building for the past few weeks into a file type that I can read on my tablet and my phone. So I can't unfortunately go back to the other document for some reason. I can close this one though. Don't save. It's not. Oh, I wonder if it's just as simple as this. Nope, that's not working. So, stream recap as usual. So today we started the creation myth slash. No, just the creation myth and deities of a world called Yngun, from the Welsh phrase, which I'm going to butcher, Ynguntaf, simply meaning first, because it is the first time I've done this. Created 10 primary deities, the Yngunni, which we have kind of ordered as. Oh, now it's showing. Weird. Notrix, the Careful Mistress, she of the Lost Memories, possibly also Vessel for Lost Memories, who is a god of Arcana, specifically the practice of magic, who casts the first spell, which brings the world into creation. She loses her memory, creating Kiagi and Lania, both gods of knowledge, one of knowledge of magic, one of knowledge of the world. During the process of casting the first spell, she creates Ustam, the Green Lord, Idion, the Dancing Light, and Quora, the Shadowed One, as light and life being essential elements in this first spell of creation. Her memory and knowledge also fractures off and gives rise to sapient life. But as part of this fracturing of her memory and knowledge, she forgets that she's finished the spell and kind of essentially recasts it, sustaining the universe. And when she finishes the second casting, the universe will end, everyone will die, and all her memory and knowledge will return to her. The people of the universe pray for her memory to return before the spell ends, so that she can cast a second spell, so she can use the gods that she's created to cast a second spell to preserve the universe and kind of connect everyone within it to each other in a collective psychic consciousness. But as more sapient life is born or created, Notrix loses more memory and knowledge and will eventually forget the spell, the first spell, and the universe will end. She'll get it back. She'll cast the spell again to create life again, ad infinitum. In order to, Larnia and Kiagi, as deities of knowledge and magic, know about this first spell and what's happening. So Larnia sets up a death cult to essentially kill people to return the memory and knowledge to Notrix so that she can get her memory back before the spell finishes and cast the second spell. And Kiagi sets up like a counter cult. Larnia creates the god of death and the god of war, Asus and Zidros, to aid in this. And Kiagi sets up a counter cult with the god of the forge and the god of protection. And I'm using god here in a gender neutral word. No genders have been assigned apart from Notrix and Ustam. To protect sapient life, because Kiagi knows that this is not the first time the spell has been cast, because Kiagi is that fragment of Notrix's memory that knows that, and that the spell can be cast again and will be cast again, and life can begin anew, and is best preserved that way rather than through genocide and murder, ritual sacrifice, etc., etc. All of which I'm quite happy with. It's collaborative creation, so it's nothing like I expected it to turn out, which is great. It was the purpose of the stream. I will definitely be returning to this in the future, probably next week. Thank you guys for coming along. Also, thanks especially to Ooze, Steve, and Celtic for their suggestions. I do try and stream about the same time every Monday, and then I post the recording of the stream on YouTube for later viewing. Twitch will only keep it for about, I think, 2 weeks or so, or a month, something like that. I can't remember what. So if you want to kind of follow along on this process with us, because we've still got a mythological cycle, civilizations, continents, cities, world events, things like that to create together. And then once it's finished, can do it all over again. Any works produced through this process, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, will be posted on my website, formatted properly and made to look decent and usable. I'll try and do like bookmarked PDFs and things. But I'll also have a Google Drive folder with the information in it, and I'll put links for that in my YouTube channel description, Twitch channel description, probably post on Twitter and update it, that kind of thing. So if you want to be a part of this journey and come back and help create more horribly twisted ideas, please by all means follow me on Twitch at Comrade Bubbles. YouTube is the same channel name, Comrade Bubbles, and I do have a Twitter presence where I post when I'm going live and stuff. Again, at Comrade Bubbles. Thank you all for coming along and for tuning in. Until next time.